Of all the members of House Atreides, the troubadour warrior Gurney Halleck had more reason than most to harbor animosity toward their rival House Harkonnen. While his resentment was largely due to his experiences before joining the Atreides, as the events of Frank Herbert's Dune unfold, Gurney's desire for revenge against this house would only continue to grow. In this video, I'd like to talk about Gurney Halleck's quest for vengeance against the Harkonnens and the part he played in their demise. As the Atreides War Master, Gurney was one of the key personnel tasked with training the house's military forces. The Atreides troops had become so skilled in combat that their reputation preceded them as some of the most capable fighters in the known universe. It was even said that their warriors were trained to be within a hair as good as the Emperor's mighty Sardaukar. Gurney also served as mentor to the Duke's young son, Paul Atreides. He sought to impress upon Paul the seriousness of the dangers they would encounter on Arrakis. Having been born and raised on the Harkonnen homeworld Giedi Prime, Gurney was especially familiar with the ruthless brutality of House Harkonnen. The Harkonnens had turned their planet into a polluted wasteland, relying on slave labor to drive their industrial machinery. Serving as a painful reminder of his time in the Harkonnen slave pits, Halleck bore a beet-colored scar on his jawline from a wound inflicted upon him by Glossu Beast Raban. The weapon used to inflict this injury was an ink-vine whip, which left a permanent poison in his skin, causing a continual irritation for the duration of his life. Gurney was also haunted by the fate of his younger sister, who died in a pleasure house for Harkonnen troops. These experiences had implanted an eternal hatred in Gurney's heart, along with an enduring desire for retribution. Along with these feelings, however, he held an undying loyalty to Duke Leto, who rescued him from the Harkonnen slave pits. Leto had given him freedom, life, and honor, as well as something he prized above all else, friendship. This unwavering devotion to the Duke was shared by many members of House Atreides, resulting in an unparalleled strength and unity among their forces. As the Atreides took over the fiefdom of Arrakis, Gurney was tasked by the Duke to persuade and enlist spice hunters who were formerly employed by the Harkonnens. With his knowledge of the Harkonnen pay scales, Gurney was allowed to use his discretion to properly incentivize and subsequently hire on these much-needed workers. The War Master was also chosen by the Duke to head a delegation assigned to contact the local spice smugglers. In exchange for a tithe, Leto would allow these smugglers to operate without any resistance. This arrangement would serve to weed out much of the corruption and bribery that had previously served to benefit the Harkonnens. This assignment would prove crucial to Gurney's survival after the Atreides' fall on Arrakis, as it was with the assistance of these smugglers that Gurney was able to survive the assault along with 73 Atreides troops. After learning of the Harkonnens' intention to place the Beast Raban in the seat of power on Dune, Halleck struggled to quell an upsurge of rage which threatened to overcome him. With the fall of House Atreides on Arrakis combined with the contempt that had been established during his time in the slave pits, Gurney was determined to remain on the planet until he could exact his revenge. In his years working with the smugglers, Halleck would report on the activity on Arrakis, including details regarding the rise of the Fremen's religious leader, Muad'Dib. These reports were read by the captive Mentat Thufir Hawat, who had been forced into serving the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. Neither Gurney nor Thufir believed that this could have been Paul, as he was presumed dead. It wasn't until a face-to-face encounter with Paul himself that Gurney discovered the truth. During an ambush on Halleck's spice harvesting operation, Paul called on his mentor to instruct his men to submit to the Fremen. With the shock of realization still fresh in his mind, Gurney complied. Their reunion resulted in jubilation, especially so for Paul, who saw their meeting as a good omen, indicating that he was on the way to a future where all was well. Until their meeting, all Gurney felt was his need for revenge, but the realization of Paul's survival gave him another welcome sense of purpose. Ever loyal to the Atreides, Gurney was quick to encourage his men to recognize Paul as the rightful Duke of Arrakis. The old War Master was then made to understand the true power of the Fremen and the threat they posed to the powers of the Imperium. These desert warriors were the key to wiping out the blight of the Harkonnens, as well as the restoration of House Atreides to its rightful place. One tense moment arrived after Gurney's reunion with Paul, in which he confronted and threatened to kill Lady Jessica, believing her to have been the traitor responsible for the sabotage which led to the Atreides' defeat at Arrakeen. After hearing the truth of the matter, namely that the traitor was in fact Dr. Yue, Gurney released Jessica. Perceiving his own actions to have been a betrayal of his duke and a besmirching of his name, Gurney pleaded to be put to death. Paul refused his mentor's request, seeing the reality of his motivations and that they came from a place of unswerving devotion. Even Jessica refused Gurney's request for death, reaffirming her love for him and honoring him for acting in the old Duke Leto's behalf. After the matter was settled, Halleck would remain at Paul's side as an advisor, protector, and friend throughout the rest of the Atreides campaign to liberate Arrakis from Harkonnen rule. It was Gurney who pulled the trigger to destroy the shield wall, allowing the approaching storm to wreak havoc on the Imperial encampment. Halleck stood by Paul as the young Duke confronted the Emperor. When it was discovered that House Harkonnen's new Baron, Feyd-Rautha, was among the Imperial company, Paul was ready to allow Gurney to challenge and kill the Harkonnen animal. Feyd, however, was quick to enact the Canley rule, effectively challenging the Atreides Duke to a duel. Gurney protested Paul's decision to accept this challenge, pleading to allow him the chance to kill Feyd. Gurney made the case for his need for revenge against the Harkonnens, considering his years in the slave pits and the death of his sister. However, Paul's suffering and personal loss at the hands of the Harkonnens was considerable as well. Although he objected to Paul's decision, he ultimately acquiesced. After his victory over Feyd-Rautha, Paul outlined the arrangements for his ascension to the throne and the positions to be held by those in his house. Gurney would be placed in the fief of Caladan and given an earldom along with a Chom directorship. Gurney's craving for revenge would ultimately be satisfied through his oversight of the transformation of the Harkonnen homeworld. As the Baron of Gedi Prime, which was later renamed Gamu, Halleck abolished slavery on the world and destroyed the industrial machines responsible for its pollution. He also supervised a massive reseeding effort to restore the planet's ecosystem. Throughout his life in service to the Atreides, Gurney typified a noble knight displaying courage, loyalty, and chivalry, along with romantic tendencies expressed primarily through his love of music. Although he is well versed in scriptural texts, his quest for revenge was not motivated by any religious devotion, but instead by his love for the Atreides. And it is these qualities of love and loyalty that faithfully characterize his role and legacy in Frank Herbert's Dune saga. But I'm curious to know what you think of Gurney Halleck's story. Which of his qualities do you think are the most admirable? Is there a particular moment involving this character that stands out the most to you? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe for more Dune and other sci-fi and fantasy news and lore. Thank you all so much for your support, and as always, have a very nerdy day.